Hey guys, tonight we journey back to ancient Egypt, not to admire the pyramids, but to slip quietly into the sandals of a pharaoh. You might picture riches, reverence, and eternal fame. But let's set the record straight. Being a living god wasn't all linen and lotus blossoms. Imagine spending your entire life under surveillance, smothered in incense smoke, married off to your sister, and stalked by priests who both serve and fear you. You're the ultimate figurehead, but you probably won't survive this without a little paranoia. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, drop your location and local time in the comments. It's always wild to see where you're all listening from. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You are born into the world with the weight of gods pressed onto your chest before you've even learned to sit up. You're not just a prince or princess, you are divine. At least, that's what the court says. The moment you arrive, your wet little self is anointed with oils, bundled in embroidered linens, and introduced to the elite not as a child, but as the living Horus, a literal manifestation of the falcon god. But here's the catch. Even gods don't get weekends off. Your crib, overshadowed by stone statues of your ancestors glaring down like judges. Your toys, custom-made ivory figurines, guarded by scribes who record what you pick up first. Your food is blessed before each meal. Your nursemaids bow before they burp you. You're a royal infant, but you're more mascot than person. The palace, at first, feels infinite. Gleaming limestone halls echo with sandal steps and gossip. You learn to walk across papyrus mats while servants trail behind with fans and gold leaf rattles, and every move you make is scrutinized. Are you precocious enough? Pious enough? Do you resemble your father, the God King, or your mother, the great royal wife? Either way, you won't be raised by them. You're far too important. Your education starts early, not with simple math or the ABCs, but with Ma'at, the sacred principle of balance and order. Tutors drill it into you between etiquette drills and religious rituals. You learn how to hold a crook and flail, how to address the gods in temple script, and how to sit through hours of incense-heavy prayers without scratching your nose. One sneeze and a priest might declare it an omen. Your friends, not so much friends as carefully selected play companions of noble blood, groomed to serve you in adulthood. One might become your vizier, another your general. A few, disturbingly, might later become your wives. By the time you're 10, your identity has fused with the state. You're not allowed to simply be. When you're moody, they call it divine anger. When you cry, it's recorded as a celestial sign. There's no hiding under the bed or sneaking out the window. In fact, the concept of alone simply doesn't exist. Even when you sleep, guards linger outside your doors, ears attuned to every whisper. And oh, the expectations. You're expected to be just, brave, eloquent, and knowledgeable in everything from hieroglyphics to warfare strategy. And if you show weakness, there's always a cousin or half-brother in the wings, waiting for you to cough the wrong way. Historians still argue whether young pharaohs truly believed they were divine or simply played the role to survive. Maybe you do believe it. Or maybe you lie awake at night, wondering if the gods are laughing at you behind their golden masks. And don't expect your body to be your own. The high priests insist that your health reflects the nation's vitality. Caught a cold? That's a crisis of state. You're dosed with honey-soaked herbs, leech therapy, and spells chanted by temple healers who smell like old scrolls and garlic. Want to skip a ritual because your feet hurt? Too bad. The Nile depends on your attendance. There's also this bizarre contradiction you can't escape. You're considered the apex of human perfection, and yet you're completely coddled. You don't choose your clothes. You don't even scratch your own back. And gods forbid, literally, if you speak out of turn during a festival or look bored during a lion hunt demonstration. At ceremonies, you're carried on gilded thrones by sweating men twice your age. You wave to the crowd while temples erupt in trumpet blasts and sycophants chant praises. Your portrait is carved into stone at age 12, muscular and wise-looking, even though your voice still squeaks and you just got scolded for kicking your sandals across the chamber. Somewhere around puberty, they might start calling you the one who brings the floods. No pressure. If the Nile doesn't rise on time, farmers grumble that you've fallen out of favor with the gods. So you visit temples, toss in offerings, and pray, mostly that no one notices you're terrified of failing a job you never applied for. And let's not forget the court politics already swirling around you. If your mother's not the queen, she's plotting to make you king anyway. If your uncle is the high priest, he's probably measuring your skull size to compare it with the statues of past rulers. And those hieroglyphs on your palace walls? They're not just decoration. They're propaganda, etched reminders that you're supposed to be a living legend. Here's a fun side note. Some pharaohs were crowned when they were toddlers. One poor kid, Pepi II, allegedly ruled for 94 years, assuming the records weren't exaggerated by overzealous scribes. He reportedly hated flies so much, he made servants smear honey on themselves to lure them away. If nothing else, it shows that even child gods have their quirks. So no, you don't run barefoot by the river or chase frogs with a stick. You don't make mistakes without consequences. You don't grow up. You ascend, ready or not. And that's just your childhood. Morning comes early in the palace, not with sunlight filtering through gauzy linen drapes, but with chanting, low, rhythmic, relentless. Somewhere in the temple wing, priests are already invoking Ra, the sun god, as you blink blearily at the carved ceiling above your head. You don't wake up to birdsong. You wake up to ritual. Your attendants enter quietly, heads bowed, bearing trays of perfumed oils, strips of linen, and bowls of water laced with lotus. And before you've even opened both eyes, they begin. You're not allowed to bathe yourself. Heaven forbid. That's a job for 4 grown men and one extremely fussy high servant who supervises every scrub of your divine skin. The water is lukewarm and slightly gritty, infused with natron, that salty mineral Egyptians love so much they later stuff it inside mummies. It stings. You grimace. One servant notices and quickly looks away. You're a god. Gods don't wince. Next comes the oiling. Your skin is massaged with crushed almond and moringa oil until you're shinier than a statue. Then comes the makeup. Yes, the makeup. Coal, ground from galena stone and soot, is painted thick around your eyes, not for beauty, though it does give you a dramatic flair, but to protect you from the sun and evil spirits. Historians still argue whether this eyeliner had legitimate medicinal value or was mostly symbolic. Either way, you don't get a say. After that, you're powdered, dabbed with myrrh resin under your arms, and draped in pristine white linen robes, pleated so finely it takes hours to press them. An entire workshop labors daily to make sure your tunic looks properly divine. If there's a wrinkle, someone's getting reassigned to dung-shoveling duty. Your sandals, handcrafted from palm fiber or leather, softened by the sweat of craftsmen who never get to wear what they make. A cobra emblem is affixed to your brow, not for style, but because this little rearing snake, the Uraeus, is supposed to spit fiery death at your enemies. You've never seen it happen, but you pretend. You're now clean, dressed, scented, and alert, but not for breakfast. First comes your public appearance. You step into the hall of appearances, a chamber polished to such a gleam it doubles as a mirror. Flanked by guards, you approach a balcony where nobles, priests, scribes, and hangers-on await a glimpse of you. You stand there, still as a statue, while the crowd murmurs, bows, and sometimes cries with joy. You're 13. You'd rather be back in bed. But this is your daily role, the morning manifestation of Ra. You raise your hand in benediction, repeat words drilled into your skull by ritual priests, and pretend not to notice that one of the guards is picking at his tunic seam with nervous fingers. Once the performance is over, you finally get to eat. A light breakfast, flatbread, dates, honey, and occasionally roast duck if you're feeling particularly holy that morning. But you can't eat too much. You might have another parade today. Somewhere between noon and sunset, you're shuffled through a rotation of duties that would make even an overachieving modern CEO groan. You inspect temple construction. You bless scrolls. You listen to your vizier drone about irrigation logistics in the Fayum. Occasionally, you perform a ritual slaughter, a symbolic one, thankfully, usually a clay model of Egypt's enemies, crushed under your feet or dashed on the altar. But the parades? Oh, the parades. You are mounted on a golden litter carried by 16 sweaty men, and you are paraded through the capital as people throw petals and chant praises. It looks glorious. It smells less so. Camels, oxen, sweating bodies, incense mixed with garlic. It's a hot, dense wall of odor that follows you wherever you go. Your arms ache from holding the royal crook and flail aloft. Your face cramps from smiling too long. One time you sneezed and someone called it a sign of bountiful harvest. Another time, you tripped slightly getting off the litter, and priests had to organize an emergency ceremony to restore balance. Let's not forget the temple offerings. You've got to appear before the gods at various altars across your kingdom, bowing, praying, and offering incense or bread or, on fun days, bulls. You don't actually kill the animals, but you do wave a ceremonial knife as musicians pound drums and dancers spin in dizzying circles, faces painted in symbols. Even you don't understand yet. Sometimes, when you walk among the people, you're instructed not to make eye contact with commoners. You're not supposed to show curiosity or fear. You are above. Even when someone faints in awe at your passing. Yes, that happens. You must simply glide by as if their devotion is expected. You are a god. You do not react to your worship. But you're not stupid. You can see things, whispers between courtiers, side glances from your half-brother, gifts sent by suspiciously generous temple priests. You know this is a game. One wrong move, and you're not divine anymore. You're disposable. A fringe tidbit that always makes you uneasy. There's a theory that the pharaoh's sacred beard, the long, curled appendage you wear during ceremonies, might not have started as fashion. Some say it was originally a leash, a literal handle, a way for priests to tug the living god into position during early rites. That thought keeps you up some nights. And still, for all this pageantry, you're just a teenager. You want to scratch your leg when a fly lands. You want to ask why the god Sobek looks like a crocodile wearing eyeliner. You want to stop pretending, but you don't. Because tomorrow morning, the same servants will enter your chamber. The same oils will be rubbed into your skin. The same kohl will rim your tired eyes. And the same songs will rise from the temple before the sun is even up. And you'll be scrubbed, painted, and paraded again. Like clockwork. You're barely old enough to grow a beard, though your court sculptor has already carved one onto your statue, when your advisors begin whispering about marriage. Not love, not attraction, marriage. Royal blood must be kept pure, they say, like wine sealed in alabaster jars. And so the most sacred, logical choice for your bride is your sister. Yes, that sister. The one you used to chase around the palace gardens. The one who once flung a pomegranate at your head during a disagreement over who got the bigger crocodile figurine. And now, you are to marry her. For the good of Egypt, of course. You sit on a lotus wood chair while priests explain that Isis married Osiris. And so it is divine precedent. Nothing weird about it. Historians still argue whether these sibling marriages were emotionally genuine or entirely ceremonial, but it doesn't matter. You don't get to protest. Your sister is preened, perfumed, and prepped to become your great royal wife. And even if she doesn't become your favorite, she'll be immortalized on walls standing proudly beside you, always half a step behind. And it's not just one bride. You're pharaoh now. You'll have a harem of the palace, a polite way to say dozens of wives and concubines, many foreign, shipped in as diplomatic packages from kingdoms with names you can't pronounce. They're brought to you in gilded barges, gifted like exotic pets with the added pressure of potential heirs. Some are barely older than you. Some are terrified. Some are terrifying. But don't get any illusions of control. Every one of these marriages comes with a political string. You can't favor one without alienating another faction. You can't neglect one without risking rumors, and heaven help you if any of them bear sons. That's when succession politics truly kick in. Each mother scheming to make her child the next divine ruler. Your days are now split between state rituals and domestic negotiations that would humble even modern diplomats. Who sits beside you during the annual flood festival? Which queen receives the blue lotus bouquet during the spring rites? Who gets her own wing of the palace, and who has to share with the Libyan envoy's cousin? These choices matter, and every decision you make echoes across generations, or at least across the scribes' records. One time, A royal wife faked a divine dream in which Amun himself declared her son to be the true heir. Whether she was a true believer or just deeply manipulative remains unclear, but the high priests considered it worth a private audience. You had to pretend to ponder it while resisting the urge to laugh or scream. But marriage is only half the equation. The real union, the one you can't escape, is with your job. Every breath you take, every decree you issue, every dream you whisper in sleep is interpreted as a state matter. Did you mumble something about rain in your sleep last week? The priesthood already started preparing ceremonies to avert drought. You are not allowed to have off days, or odd moods, or personal opinions. Even your dreams are not private. At night, you lie in a cool chamber with a cedar oil burner wafting lazy spirals of smoke toward the ceiling. You try to think of something, anything, not involving papyrus scrolls or godly lineages. Maybe the time you tried to fish a frog out of the Nile as a child. Maybe the way sunlight bounced off the palace pools in winter. But your mind drifts inevitably back to your duties, because tomorrow you'll be asked to review grain yields and preside over a ceremony involving sacred cats, and oversee the opening of a new canal, and resolve a dispute between two nobles over the exact width of their adjoining fields, a debate so dry it could mummify a baboon. You wonder sometimes what would happen if you simply disappeared. If you vanished into the desert one night, traded your linen robes for peasant garb, and walked until the stars swallowed you whole. But you won't, because even fantasizing about freedom feels treasonous. Instead, you return to your reality. Your official titles now number in the dozens: Son of Ra, Lord of the Two Lands, Chosen of the Gods, Defender of Mayat, and so on. Your scribes need entire rolls of papyrus just to list them all. Each one is a reminder that your life is no longer yours. You belong to Egypt, or rather, to Egypt's myth about you. A strange fringe belief circulates among some desert tribes that the pharaoh is not a person at all, but a celestial being who descends temporarily into human form. They say that when you die, your soul will return to the stars. A nice thought. Except it means that everything between now and then is just the messy, mortal middle. You're not allowed to be seen bleeding. If you stub your toe on a limestone threshold, a medic rushes in before the bruise even blooms. If you catch a fever, the royal doctors lock the palace down in near panic. What if the gods are angry? What if your body, so sacred, so symbolic, is beginning to fail? But you recover, because you must. There's always another ceremony, another sacred duty, another offering to present. And your sister wife is waiting, flanked by attendants with eyes like judgment. She smiles, politely, frostily. Maybe she's thinking the same thing you are. We never asked for this. You glance toward the distant desert from your balcony. Somewhere out there, beyond the temples and bureaucracy and perfectly aligned stones, is silence, real silence. But it's not for you. You return inside. The priest is already waiting to discuss your schedule for next week. Night falls, but you don't sleep peacefully. Not in the palace. Not in the most sacred house of Egypt. Beneath ceilings painted with constellations, beneath sheets perfumed with blue lotus and myrrh, you lie still, eyes open, listening to the silence. and to the not-so-silent whispers that snake through the corridors. Because even here, in your sanctified space, you are not safe. Being a god does not exempt you from fear. By now, you know too much. You've overheard too many conversations between priests behind fan screens, caught too many glances exchanged during court sessions. There are factions everywhere. Some loyal to your mother, some loyal to your half-brother, some loyal to themselves, and all of them know this brutal truth. If you die, the machine keeps running. The throne doesn't stay empty for long. You begin to understand why pharaohs before you went mad with paranoia, why one predecessor had his food tasted 3 times before touching it, why another had every room in the palace rebuilt every year to avoid memorized layouts and secret trapdoors. Historians still argue whether these were symptoms of divine insight or just standard palace psychosis. Even your high priests are not above suspicion. They're supposed to be your servants, intermediaries between you and the gods. But sometimes you feel like the pet falcon, beautiful, rare, admired, but tethered. They chant your praises by day and murmur reservations by candlelight. If the grain harvests falter, if the Nile flood disappoints, they might quietly decide that you are the weak link in the divine chain. And once enough of them agree, well, divinity becomes surprisingly negotiable. You remember a chilling story. One pharaoh, possibly Teddy, though records are fuzzy, was assassinated by his own palace guard, stabbed in his sleep. His name was struck from several temple walls, as if erased from memory, the ultimate insult in a culture that prized immortality through record. It stuck with you. Even gods can be scrubbed away. Today, one of your royal cupbearers was quietly dismissed. No explanation, just a single glance from your vizier, and he vanished. No one will say it, but you suspect poison. Perhaps not even intended for you. Perhaps a failed attempt on someone else. Still, the cup was yours. You take your meals now in strange order. You ask for fish, and then don't eat it. You feign illness to avoid appearing at certain gatherings. You pretend not to notice when your guard shifts change too early or too late. You smile at everyone, especially the ones you don't trust. And the court is no haven. Every noble family wants influence. They send gifts, flatter your sister wife, offer their daughters as concubines. They sponsor temple improvements, hoping for your endorsement. And yet, every alliance you accept creates 3 enemies. Every favor sparks resentment. It's exhausting. You rule with the power of the gods, but wield it like balancing a pot of scalding resin with one hand tied. Once, during a temple procession, your chariot wheel cracked. Just slightly, but you saw your general flinch. Just enough to make you wonder. Had someone loosened the pins? Was this the first test? A curious fringe theory circles in secret, that the priests sometimes choose pharaohs not by blood, but by divine signs staged for public spectacle. In other words, if enough omens are conveniently interpreted, you can go from god to goner in a single lunar cycle. A comet, a failed flood, an eclipse. Any of them could be used to declare that the gods have withdrawn their blessing. The palace scribe insists that your reign has been auspicious. but you noticed he changed the spelling of one omen report, just slightly, enough to shift its meaning from ill tidings to neutral winds. It was probably to protect you, or to protect himself. Even your statues might turn against you. One night, a storm cracked a temple obelisk that bore your name. It crashed in the sand right in front of a noble family's estate. A priest had to organize an emergency ceremony to reset the heavens. You didn't ask whether the obelisk fell naturally or whether someone greased the foundation just enough. And then there are the dreams. You keep having one in particular. You're walking through a tunnel lined with cobra heads, and at the end, instead of a throne, there's a stone slab with your name being chiseled away. You always wake up just before the last letter disappears. They've started calling you the all-powerful, which is always a bad sign. The louder the praises, the greater the paranoia. Because here's the real truth no one dares speak. Power in Egypt is never yours. It's on loan. From the gods, from the priests, from the collective will of the people. And it can be repossessed, quietly, suddenly, bloodlessly, or not. Even your tomb is political. Architects have begun preliminary work, though you're still young. You approved the layout last week. 3 chambers, a false passage, and 2 hidden stairwells. Not because you're picky, because you know what kind of enemies might be coming. One night, a servant girl spills oil and apologizes with too much fear. She's executed by her overseer before you can intervene. You're horrified, but also strangely numb. This is the kingdom you reign over. Every act, no matter how small, spirals outward in unpredictable ways. You go to the temple more often now, not for ceremony, for quiet. You sit beside statues twice your height, eyes closed, incense burning thick around you, and try to imagine the gods actually listening. You beg them not for glory, but for a day without whispers, and maybe, just once, a night without a knife in it. By now, you've stopped pretending you're immortal. You might still sign edicts as living Horus, but deep down you know the truth. You're racing time, and time has a head start. The architects working on your tomb ask more questions these days. Do you want more stars painted on the ceiling? Should the corridor curve or remain straight? Do you want the burial chamber deeper, harder to reach? You're not even 30, and already you've reviewed 6 different sarcophagus sketches. Nothing like choosing your eternal resting pose before you've finished sprouting all your wisdom teeth. Death isn't some faraway poetic notion. It is a logistical project, daily, ongoing, bureaucratically exhausting. You've seen the Book of the Dead so many times it's basically bedtime reading, though not exactly soothing. It details spells, rituals, maps of the underworld, and a terrifying checklist of sins. If you fail to pass the god's judgment, your heart gets devoured by Amit, a crocodile-lion-hippo monster hybrid with the appetite of a vacuum and the forgiveness of a tax auditor. So naturally, you prepare. Your tomb is carved deep in the desert cliffs beyond the city, where the sun burns and the stones never forget. Each chamber is mapped with care. False passages are added to fool grave robbers. Sacred symbols are etched along every wall, designed to guide your soul past demons and guardians in the afterlife. You even commission paintings of yourself, making offerings to the gods, just in case they forget who you are when you show up. Still, Historians argue whether all this was for spiritual peace or to impress the living. You start collecting amulets, lots of them, scarabs, eyes of Horus, tiny golden ankhs. Some are stitched into your clothes, others tucked into your sandals. One is sewn under your tongue, meant to help you speak in the afterlife. Ironically, in life, no one listens unless you're shouting through 6 intermediaries. And while you're planning your death, life keeps marching forward with an ever tighter chokehold. The cult of Osiris expects new temple donations. Farmers await your blessing for the barley season. Nubian rebels stir unrest in the south. And of course, your sister wife wants to know why her statue in the northern shrine is half a cubit shorter than yours. You begin attending more funerals. Distant uncles, high priests, even a favorite concubine who choked on a fig. Each time, you process through wailing mourners, your face painted calm, your heart whispering, "Will mine be this dramatic? Will anyone cry this hard for me?" Here's a lesser-known, somewhat morbid tradition. When a pharaoh dies, select servants are sometimes entombed with him. Some volunteer, some are volunteered. It's considered an honor, a fast track to paradise. You've seen a few of these volunteers up close: nervous girls, quiet scribes, warriors too young to have fought. You're not sure they truly want it, but no one asks them twice. And yet, despite all this obsession with the afterlife, the fear isn't really death. It's being forgotten, to be erased, name chiseled out, tomb looted, body burned or stolen or lost. If your tomb is never found, your ka, your soul, has nowhere to return. That's the real nightmare. So you become a collector of names. You order statues, obelisks, inscriptions on boats and granaries. You have your cartouche carved into mountain faces. May the name of insert pharaoh here endure forever. You even sneak your name into poems and love songs, disguised as metaphors. But you know better than anyone. Forever is a long time, and the jackals are always waiting. You try to secure your legacy. You appoint your heir carefully, not the strongest son perhaps, but the one with the best chance of surviving. You train him in rituals, speech, war games, but in your heart, you worry. Will he last? Will he learn fast enough to navigate the snakes already slithering in the court gardens? And even if he rules, will your memory remain bright or fade under his shadow? One morning, you wake to find a piece of papyrus slipped under your mat. An anonymous poem. No name, just a few lines. When the sun forgets your voice and the stone no longer echoes, who then will feed your soul? You burn it, not because you're angry, because it's true. Still, you play the game. You host festivals in your own honor. You ride the royal bark down the Nile while crowds throw petals. You smile while your muscles ache from standing like a god statue for 5 hours straight. You give offerings to the gods with one hand and bribe officials with the other. A fringe theory you once heard during a nighttime conversation with a foreign priest, that some pharaohs secretly tried to become actual immortals. They drank mercury, ate gold dust, consumed strange potions made from herbs found only at certain lunar phases. Whether they achieved eternal life or just died faster is, as always, debated. You considered it, briefly, then remembered the gold dust tasted awful. So instead, you invest in walls, in stone. in legacy carved by hand, one chisel tap at a time. And as dusk paints the sky in copper and violet, you stand at the mouth of your tomb in progress and wonder if any of this, any of it, will still matter 1,000 years from now, when your name is mispronounced by foreign tongues, when your face is wrapped in museum glass, when your sacred heart ends up in a drawer labeled unclassified. You turn away before the wind steals your doubts. You still have a kingdom to run. By now, your body is aching in ways even the priests can't fix with oils and prayers. You've grown used to being revered. But reverence, as you've discovered, is its own special form of torture. Because every single moment of your life, you are being worshipped. It sounds like a dream until you live it, until you can't cough without someone bowing, until you can't walk into a room without a drum beat and 5 proclamations of your holiness, until your back hurts and no one dares mention it because gods don't get sore muscles. Worship doesn't mean people love you. It means they fear you. It means no one tells you the truth unless it's through a poem or a carefully arranged bowl of dates symbolizing dissent, or a eunuch with news too dangerous for the court. And it means every sneeze, sigh, or sneeze-sized sigh becomes political. Take the said festival, for instance. It's supposed to rejuvenate the pharaoh's powers after 30 years on the throne. Sounds like a fun party, right? Nope. It's a high-stakes performance test. You're expected to run laps around the ritual court, perform offerings, and prove to everyone that you're still fit to rule. You nearly twist your ankle on the 3rd circuit. The priest looks at you funny. You spend the next 2 weeks pretending your limp is a new ceremonial strut. Meanwhile, your courtiers treat your body like a divine relic. When you eat, they observe your chewing patterns. When you yawn, they interpret it as a signal from the gods to adjust agricultural quotas. You once lost your appetite at dinner and sparked a 3-day fast across the palace. That was the week your general tried to march barefoot through a sandstorm in solidarity. And it's not just the people. It's the temples. Your face is everywhere. Painted in blue and gold, carved in limestone, etched into the handles of ceremonial fans. Your likeness has been duplicated so many times that even you aren't sure which ones actually resemble you anymore. One temple statue features you with the chest of a bull and the wings of a hawk. You try to pretend it makes symbolic sense. Really, it's just uncomfortable. Priests bow before you at every entrance. Musicians compose hymns to your birth, which you don't remember, and your wisdom, which you suspect they exaggerate. You are referred to only by your 52 official titles in public. It takes so long just to greet you that you once fell asleep, standing up before they got to beloved of the 2 ladies. Somewhere along the way, your humanity slipped out the back door. No one looks you in the eye anymore. They either stare too reverently at your feet or too reverently at the ceiling. You could shout, "Help, I'm stuck in the linen closet." And the guards would probably offer incense instead of a ladder. A fringe tidbit. There's a hidden chamber in one of the older temples filled with wooden effigies of past pharaohs, not for worship, but for ritual complaints. Supplicants whisper grievances to them when they're too afraid to approach the current ruler. You suspect a few of your own mini statues are already in circulation. And then there's the dreams. You've always had dreams, but now they're recorded, interpreted. If you dream of a cat, the high priest declares it a sign to expand Bastet's temple. If you dream of falling, they schedule an urgent consultation with the gods. You once dreamt of a donkey in a bathtub. The next week, 5 cities in Upper Egypt began bathing livestock before feasts. Historians still argue whether these rituals gave true structure to Egyptian governance or simply drowned it in incense and performance. You know your opinion, but you keep smiling. Because what happens when you stop? What happens if one day you say, "I'm tired. I don't want to be divine today"? The answer is silence, then panic, then whispers, then possibly revolt. Because Egypt doesn't just want you to be a god. It needs you to be one. And not just any god, but the flawless, shining, eternally just one. You can't wince when your sandals chafe. You can't flinch when the embalmer's knife slips during a funeral rite. You can't forget your lines during a prayer, even though they're 35 verses long and in a dialect only 3 living priests fully understand. Sometimes you sneak away to the gardens, not to relax, but to breathe like a human again. You kneel by the papyrus reeds and touch the dirt. One afternoon, a palace servant stumbles upon you. You wave him off. He runs to the high priest and reports that you communed with the earth spirits. The next morning, there's a new festival. The festival of the humble pharaoh. Great. Now you're being worshipped for squatting in mud. Your sister wife says nothing when she sees the new murals. She just sips her wine with an expression that says, "See, this is what happens when you try to be real. You are no longer a person. You are a symbol, a role, a ritual in human form." And the strangest thing is, some days you believe it. You feel the crowd's gaze and it electrifies you. You raise your arms at the right moment and the Nile's winds seem to answer. You speak and silence rolls out like a carpet. You feel huge, timeless, golden, colossal. But then you wake up with a cramp in your leg and the illusion crumbles. You look in the mirror, a polished bronze plate held by a servant who doesn't blink. Your eyes are yours. Your mouth is dry. You have 3 wrinkles under your right eye now. Gods aren't supposed to wrinkle. Still, the rituals resume. You take your place on the dais. You nod as incense swirls. You accept praise, endless praise, until it's just sound. You are the sun, the law, the voice, the breath of Egypt. But some nights, in the silence before dawn, you whisper to the wall, "Just once, I'd like to be forgotten." You've built cities in your name, temples, obelisks taller than the tallest palm trees. Your likeness has been carved into mountain faces and painted across hundreds of tomb walls, but none of it will save you, because sooner or later, you die. Not yet, not this morning, but the reality stalks you like a jackal in the dunes. You feel it in your joints, in the sluggish way your breath catches in the midday heat. Every stumble is interpreted, every cough noted. Somewhere deep beneath your palace, the tomb workers chip away steadily, rhythmically, carving eternity inch by inch. And the closer you get to your final breath, the more bitter the irony becomes. You spend your whole life preparing for the afterlife, only to have everything stolen before your soul even gets settled. Grave robbing isn't just a possibility, it's an inevitability. Everyone knows it. You build elaborate traps. You commission false doors, cursed inscriptions, secret chambers beneath secret chambers. One pharaoh had his tomb workers killed to protect its location. Legend says their blood stained the sandstone walls before being scraped off and buried beneath the floor tiles. Still, someone always finds a way in. Usually, it's someone inside. A guard, a stonemason, a priest with debts, maybe even a family member. You've issued dozens of decrees punishing tomb robbers, cut off hands, exile, impalement. The usual menu. And still, the black market trade thrives. Sacred scarabs, gilded canopic jars, even mummified pets sold for silver and spices. Historians still argue whether the grandest tombs were ever truly sealed the way they were meant to be. Some suggest the theft began before the burial ceremonies were even over, that while the chants still echoed through the valley, servants were already prying gems from statues behind the procession's back. It's not just greed, it's hunger. Generations born into poverty, eyeing the glint of royal gold as their only escape, and maybe, just maybe, a whisper of revenge. Because while you lived like a god, they lived in your shadow. You think of all the laborers who hauled your sarcophagus into position. Did one of them sneak back under cover of darkness? Did they leave a mark? Some hidden symbol? A curse reversed? A final laugh? Even your body isn't safe. You've been assured you'll be sealed tight, swaddled in layers of linen, protected by divine texts and resin coatings. But you've seen what happens when those fail. You've heard stories. Mummies unwrapped and desecrated. Pharaohs burned for fuel by invading armies. One fringe account even claims a forgotten ruler's remains were mistaken for dried meat and served in a feast to drunken mercenaries. You'd like to believe that one's exaggerated. Hopefully, you write more laws. You commission more decoys. You instruct your heir in secret burial paths, alternative names, backup tombs. You can plan for everything, except time. Eventually, the sand will shift. Maps will be lost. Your carefully concealed tomb might vanish beneath dunes, or be swallowed by an earthquake. Or worse, rediscovered centuries later by strangers who see your sacred resting place as a curiosity, not a sanctum. They'll poke around with metal tools, mispronounce your name, and cart your treasures off to distant lands. They'll stare at your mask behind museum glass, whispering, "Wow, look at all that gold," as if that's what mattered. You wonder, will they know who you were? Or will you become just another headline? Ancient king unearthed after 3,000 years. Your body labeled, your story simplified, your gods forgotten. A while ago, you overheard a scribe mutter something unsettling. Even eternity can be rescheduled. It's stuck with you. So now, you walk your tomb alone at dusk. The workers pause, stepping aside respectfully as you enter the burial chamber. It's cool, the air thick with stone dust and old incense. Your sarcophagus sits in the center, unfinished but unmistakable. Your face is already carved on the lid, idealized, ageless. You stare at it, and for a brief moment, you envy the stonemason. He leaves a legacy with each strike of his chisel. You? You leave shadows, fables, stone that may or may not hold. You tell him to stop for the day. He bows and vanishes into the torchlit hallway. You press a hand to the lid of your future, and whisper something even your gods might not understand. I hope someone remembers me, but I hope they get it wrong, because if they do, at least you've become a mystery. And mysteries, unlike kings, never really die. And then at last, the day comes. Not with thunder, not with celestial fireworks, just with a flicker. One moment, you are the divine ruler of Egypt, seated on your throne, listening to the court poet recite another impossibly long ode comparing your jawline to the prow of a royal bark. The next, your heart stutters. The room tilts. The colors drain from the gold. You fall, maybe, or maybe you don't. The guards rush to you. The priest is already chanting. The court physician mixes oils and honey and hopes the gods are in a forgiving mood. You do not speak, or if you do, no one remembers the words exactly. Later, several versions will be recorded, each conveniently symbolic. He smiled and embraced Ra. He whispered, "Balance is restored." One inscription even claims your last breath sounded like a falcon's cry. That one's a little much. You die. And in death, your real journey begins. Your body is taken at once, cleansed, shrouded, perfumed. Not because anyone's particularly sentimental. This is protocol. Precision. Entire scrolls are dedicated to the process. The opening of the mouth ceremony is prepared. Your tongue is ritually awakened, your nostrils filled with incense. You are embalmed, your insides carefully removed and placed into sacred jars. Each organ gets its own godly guardian: liver, stomach, lungs, intestines, all tucked into painted canopic jars like holy leftovers. Your heart is weighed later, spiritually, that is, against a feather. No one knows for sure what happens if it fails the test. But let's be honest, you've hedged your bets with enough amulets to supply a small army. The embalmers wrap you slowly, layer after layer of linen soaked in resins, scented with pine and myrrh. They insert charms, tiny beetles, protective eyes, fragments of spells, into the folds. A golden mask covers your face, idealized and eternal. It's meant to show the gods that you were always as divine as you pretended to be. Your funeral is massive. Trumpets, priests, hundreds of mourners, both professional and genuine. People cry, people chant. Your wives wail dramatically. Your children look confused. Your enemies smile behind veils. You're carried by bark down the Nile, floated like Osiris himself, your barge gleaming in the sun. Crowds line the banks. Flowers are thrown. Bread is broken. Dates are shared. It's a party and a warning. This is what happens to those born divine. They say the pharaoh becomes Osiris in death. You're not sure you believe it, but it beats becoming jackal bait. You're interred at sunset, your tomb sealed, your name spoken over and over to anchor your soul. And then, silence. Years pass, then decades, then centuries. Your tomb is looted, of course. Despite every trap, every curse, every hidden chamber, someone finds a way in. They take the gold, the amulets, even your sandals. Your body, left behind, survives in fragments. One of your toes ends up in a French museum, your mask in another. Your name is misread, your titles shuffled like cards. A British scholar mistakes you for a minor noble. A tourist takes a selfie next to your sarcophagus. Someone refers to your image as cute. You were a god. You were everything. And now you're a trivia question. But here's the strangest thing. You still exist. In memory. In myth. In bedtime history podcasts told centuries later to help people fall asleep. They say your life was disturbing. And it was. But it was also dazzling, absurd, relentless, and astonishingly human. You weren't just the ruler of Egypt. You were the most worshipped prisoner the world has ever known. So sleep now, Pharaoh. Let the desert reclaim your secrets. Let the stars move over your resting place. Let the winds scatter the last whispers of your name. You have done enough. And now, as the desert night stretches quiet and wide over the empty tombs, we slow the story, soften the light, and leave the golden halls behind. The torches have all burned out. The priests have gone home. The statues no longer stare. There's only silence now, cool, wide, and patient. Just the gentle wind threading through the Valley of the Kings, brushing dust across carvings too old to read, and whispering to no one in particular. You're no longer the pharaoh. You're not even in your bed. You're floating far above it all now, carried by a current older than history itself. Imagine it. Your breath slows, your body weightless, as if wrapped in linen and drifting down the Nile. The stars shimmer like bits of crushed pearl, and the night hums softly, like the buzz of cicadas in summer reeds. There's nothing to chase, nothing to prove, just this stillness, stretched long like the shadow of an obelisk at dusk. No court to impress, no priests to appease, just your heartbeat, fading gently into quiet peace. So let your muscles sink, let your jaw unclench, let the golden mask fall away. You are not a god tonight. You are just someone who needs rest. Good night, listener. Sleep well. The gods will wait. SS.